Welcome and thank you all for joining us today for the Nokia panel discussion, Stay Calm and Network On, Partnering for Success During Times of Upheaval. Here to present today from Nokia is their broadband sales engineering manager, John DeLucia, and representing Winncom Technologies, we have our VP of Engineering, Kyle Barnes. If anyone has any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to add them into the chat and they'll be addressed at the end of the webinar. Gentlemen, you're up.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Don. Little background on me. I was an operator for about 20 years prior to getting into distribution here at Winncom. Everything from public safety to carrier transport. I've used a lot of the equipment out on the market. I'm happy to have this opportunity to speak to you guys about the transition from current DZS equipment to hopefully Nokia. John?
Yeah, John DeLucia. I actually lead a team of broadband sales engineers. We have a small team that covers our, fixed networks, obviously, our IP products and our optical solutions. I have been in fixed networks all of 18 years, something like that. I haven't counted it up recently, but 18 or 19 years since I actually started with the company. Started with Alcatel-Lucent, and then obviously Nokia. But I've always, loved PON, right? Passive optical networks, and the last mile fiber to the home technologies. So happy to be here and happy to talk about anything you guys need to.
Gotcha. Well, let's go ahead and talk a little bit briefly about the Nokia Winncom advantage. Obviously, we're going to get right into it with the DZS exiting the market. Operators are now facing a pretty tough decision. John, I guess, where do they start and how can they move forward with confidence that this type of thing won't happen again?
Yeah, I mean, Nokia, or like I said, we've been in this. Nokia bought us from Alcatel-Lucent. Alcatel's been in this market for 22 years. We're some of the broadband leaders out there. 70% of the XGS market is ours in North America. We were the first ones with 1 gig GPON out in the fields. We were the first XGS company to deploy XGS in networks. We are the global market leader, for PON and IP. We kind of fall between Cisco and us, but the last quarter we actually did more business than Cisco. So we're quietly one of the largest across, and we're a global player. We've been here. We have a lot of R&D research. We have about 3,500 fixed networks engineers across the world that actually support our PON solutions. And I I think clearly we'll be here for a long, long time. We continue to write the standards for a lot of these new technologies that are out there.
Yeah, that's what I kind of want to talk about real quick. Obviously, most people are going to be familiar with GPON, XGS PON, but can you talk about a little bit about what's available today, and then kind of how you guys are participating in some of the standards boards and some of the demos you guys have done over the last 2 years that were pretty impressive?
Yeah, I mean, GPON's been around. It's had a good 20-year run. It's on its, it's kind of on its way out, right? I mean, if you're doing a greenfield deployment, a brand new deployment, clearly XGS is probably the way to go. There was always a big gap between GPON and XGS, but that has shrunk considerably. So there's not that much of a delta anymore. GPON is still an active technology. We just came out with 3 new GPON ONTs actually last year, and I think we've got another one that could be introduced in 2025. But also our platform supports 25 gig PON. Now 25 gig PON we introduced about 5 years ago. And it's finally just starting to take off just because the SOCs in the ONTs are available nowadays. 25 gig has been not necessarily slow to market, but it's just the adoption rate, the availability of parts, the availability of components, everything across the marketplace, drives it, right? 50 and 100 gig are, on the heels of what we're seeing now. 50 gig and 100 gig, there's not much delta between the two of them. When you go 50 gig, 100 gigs just right behind it. So it'll kind of be like Wi-Fi 6E, Wi-Fi 7. But, there will be considerable cost when it comes to putting 50 gig out now, and 25 gigs available today. It's built on the XGS technology. It's a single optic. There's no special optics. Uses the same fiber plant out in the field. So, and it's available on our one FWLTC card, which handles all three technologies. So you can mix and match at any time.
John, I think it's important to talk about, so Nokia saw an opportunity in the market while GPON and XGS PON are ratified. The 50 gig and 100 gig PON still aren't technically ratified yet, right? So Nokia saw an opportunity and they actually developed a product. And now you're seeing some of the other competitors also come up with 25 gig products that are being available. Do you see that cost going down, or do you think more development is going to be done to ratify 50 and 100 gig PON?
25 gig is going to come down considerably. You'll see probably an announcement here in June about some ONTs that we have for the 25 gig PON technologies for the residential customers. 50 and 100 gig, we anticipate 50 gig to be out in massive deployment probably in 2030. So we're still probably a good 5 years away.
Yeah.
Yes. We'll see tier ones, we'll see some of the big players putting 50 gig out, right? We've already seen announcements where Google Fiber is testing it and stuff, but how relevant is it in our marketplace right now? It's hard to say.
Yeah, great. And we want to kind of keep on topic here about what we're here for, but I think it's important to note that Nokia is on almost all of the standards bodies. They are participating, whether it's wireless with 3GPP, ITU, the IEEE. Had the pleasure of meeting some of those individuals. They're definitely forward thinking. But one thing that caught my attention when I was learning more about Nokia PON a couple years ago was the Quillion chip. Can you talk a little bit about why it's important that you guys own your own chip, manufacture your own silicon, own your own source code?
Yeah, we decided about 9 years ago to actually develop our own chipset for our PON technologies. We've had the forwarding processor, which we call FP, for IP. We're actually on version 5, so that's been around almost 20 years. We have a PSE for our optical, and obviously ReefShark for mobile. So it made sense to where PON or passive optical, FN equipment, fixed networks equipment would have its own chipset. So we made the investment. Clearly, it was millions and millions of dollars, but it gave us the ability to come out with 25 gig today. We're 5 years ahead of the rest of the market. I think the other vendors out in the marketplace will start to introduce 25 gig, as you said, Kyle. But it's been a struggle for them just because we're not bound by the merchant silicon that's in the marketplace. We have the technology, that can drive it, and we actually have the second generation Quillion 2 chipset that's actually being manufactured now. That's going to drive the 50 and 100 gig PON technologies here in the future. And there again, we'll be way ahead of our competitors just because we own that silicon. We have 5 or 6 manufacturers across the world. It is our technology. It is our development. During the pandemic, actually the Quillion chipset was introduced in 2018. So during the pandemic in 2020, 2021, we were not at a loss for chips, making equipment. Yes, we had struggles across the supply chain, but because we owned our own chipset and we design our own products and stuff, we were able to be resilient against some of that supply chain issues. And going forward, well, we'll just be more resilient. We have manufacturing facilities across the world because we're a global company, so it makes it easier for us to make the investment to move. Hell, tariffs are on everybody's mind, but we're already moving and adjusting for a lot of those things that we see coming.
Yeah, and it gives you guys the ability to be have great agility, just having different manufacturers on your own chip, right, and your own source code. So you're not waiting in line for a particular silicon. So I think that's pretty good. So a little bit more about why Winncom and Nokia is a great partnership. So Winncom isn't just a distributor. We're very involved with the Nokia engineering team, not only on the fixed networks, the mobile side as well. But we actually have their PON deployment active in our lab in Solon, as well as here in Indiana. We were able to test different ONTs, Wi-Fi units. We're able to simulate customer experience. A lot of validation that goes into that. So it's a good thing. But let's talk a little bit about innovation. John, I'm familiar with Bell Labs, but can you give a little bit of background on Bell Labs and what the ability in having that in your platform and under the Nokia name? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I hope everybody's familiar with Bell Labs. They were the research arm of Bell Telephone, AT&T, and they did they've done back in the 50s. They did a lot of research when it came to computers and transistors, and they've done a lot for the industry. So the reason that Nokia Bell Labs nowadays makes it more relevant is because we have greatly expanded that research part of it. They're actually building a new home for Nokia Bell Labs. If anybody's seen the Severance show, they're using the old Nokia Bell Labs facility, but we are building a new one. We're actually expanding that because we do develop a lot of patents. We have I'm trying to remember how many patents we have, but Nobel Prizes, laureate awards. There's a lot of great technology up there when it comes to there again, writing standards. We have 5 or 6 fixed networks engineers that are working on the 50 and 100 gig and the next PON generation technologies. So they're dedicated to helping get faster and faster speeds out there, because we'll need it in the long run.
Yeah, thank you. And we'll get into a little bit as we start going through some of these slides, talking about the different pieces of equipment and kind of the history. And I'll highlight a couple things that I found from an operator standpoint. I found very appealing, and why Nokia should be in the conversation, in all conversations. So, John, let's go ahead and start talking about some of the equipment and getting down into the details a little bit.
Yeah, so what Kyle and I did was we actually double back to see kind of compare what's out in the field right now for the DZS equipment. The OLTs on the right hand side are obviously all the DZS, the common DZS OLTs. There's some bigger ones that you'll see in other slides, but we wanted to compare port levels and capabilities, and you can see on the left hand side obviously the Nokia products that kind of match up with the DZS equipment on the right hand side. So if you're familiar with any of that, you can kind of decide or help decide what you're looking for, whether it's has to do with growth or different opportunities. But just keep in mind that this was based on the information that we could actually get from the internet. I am not a DZS engineer, so I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but we try to make a pretty good comparison between what Nokia has and what DZS has out in the field.
Yeah, so the screen that's being shown, the previous screen kind of highlighted some of the what we typically call pizza boxes in the marketplace. You can see that, you know, they're modular power supplies. Most of them have field replaceable fans, but that's the pizza box style, right? Go ahead, John.
Right, and you can see that some of the DZS products actually have XGS, GPON, you know, what they call combo PON. There's another vendor out there that has it. We call it multi-PON. You know, we didn't invent it, they didn't invent it. It was invented by the Chinese. We just built our own, but it's a great technology to make the transition from GPON to XGS. All of these support 25 gig in some juncture. You know, obviously the port density on 25 gig is limited because of the backplane. We don't want to overrun the box and oversubscribe it. So we keep it line rate across the board. But all of the shelves that we have currently support 25 gig. All it is just, you know, slotting an optic in there.
Yep.
Yeah, next slide just kind of highlights. And I got to tell you, DZS and the Nokia products line up pretty well. They're pretty close. Right, you can see, you know, 32 GPON, XGS, combo PONs, network connectivity, you know, line cards, and NT cards. So
yeah, just to kind of highlight that the MF2 or the MF series is Nokia's next gen. So most of the 50 gig and 100 gig PON will be on the MF platform. I got to see a couple demos in Mobile World Congress this year of the MF8 with some 25 gig PON optics. Pretty impressive. But again, this is the more modular style where the LT cards or line terminal cards are replaceable or upgradable. So if you just need to start with one, but you see a, you know, population density or home density allows you to go to two. Also, what's important here is both the NT cards on both models are replaceable. So next generation, we'll talk about that a little bit and some of the other form factors.
Yeah, and it's all hot swappable. I mean, kind of exactly like what DZS has. Ours is AC/DC, and it's, you know, all of these are hard temp hardened.
Yep.
And as Kyle was talking about, our MF8 just recently was announced and came out. They're actually producing it, but this will be ready for, you know, 50 and 100 gig PON capable. Which means that it will have the, you know, the different line cards that are being developed for this, and obviously the higher power module that'll be required for 50 and 100 gig PON, and then replaceable NT cards or network termination cards that'll give you the higher connectivity up through the network. So we'll eventually probably go to 800 gig or 400 gig.
Yep.
But the DZS on the right-hand side is, I gotta say, pretty close to our MF8. So as we always say in the industry, empty LT slots don't cost anything really. So, but it's good to have the extra capacity just in case you ever do need it, you know, for growth. There is some bigger boxes. Obviously, Nokia's, you know, plays in the tier 1. And 19 of the 20 largest broadband providers in the world. So the MF14's a CO-based type of equipment. It's a, you know, it'll be 50 and 100 gig capable. That obviously on the right-hand side, DZS, V14 and V16 match up fairly well. You know, I think the 14's just made for a 19-inch rack, where the 16's made for a 23-inch rack. But I think they're pretty close. Anything else, Kyle?
No, I think we really drove home the MF series. I think it's important to note, and I don't think we have any slides on the FX series, but to me, one of the kind of eye-opening things is Nokia's FX platform, which, John, you probably remember which year it came out. What year was that?
2011.
So in 2011, they introduced the FX series, but to me, I mean, they're on like revision G, revision H of the NT cards as well as the LT cards. So just the ability to grow the network without ripping everything out, it gave them a path, right? So it's one of the key benefits to using the FX and the MF series, or in DZS, it'd be the V14, V16, some of the other models, but just having that path forward, right?
Yeah, it's the longevity in the field. I mean, the FX series that you were talking about, Kyle, that'll be out in the field till 2035, 2040 probably, just because we have such a big install base, and obviously, replacing those is going to take time. But they're still very relevant. I mean, we just came out with a brand new NT card, the Fant M. So you'll see that.
Is there an M?
Yeah, you'll see that later this year. Yeah, we probably haven't talked about it, but yeah, so it continues to evolve. It will never do over 25 gig just because of the backplane capacity, but it does 25 gig today. I mean, I went to a customer that installed these in 2012, and in 2019, we said, hey, you want to put 25 gig out in the field and trial it? They're like, hey, our shells are like, 8-10 years old, but they still have the bandwidth in the backplane. It's we build it to leave it out in the field, as long as we possibly can. Clearly, electronics, has to be changed out for higher and higher bandwidth, but I mean, the chassis is going to be there for a while.
Great. I think we want to talk about some of the ONTs now.
Yeah, DZS was a very big GPON ONT. They had gotten into XGS in 2019 or so, and they had a few big wins. But there again, this G230GA on the white one on the right-hand side kind of matches up with all the different models at the top. But the G230 just came out late last year. The G010GT is 2.5 gig data only port.
Yeah, it's a neat little cost-effective box. I've got one of those here in the lab.
Yeah, and it competes against Google has a 2 gig service, so they're still using GPON for the 2 gig service out in the field. And we tried to do a comparison between POTS ports and capabilities and chipsets and whether it was temp hardened and battery backup capable, everything that we could kind of draw into. XGS, obviously there's a lot of XGS out in the field. It's been going strong fairly well, and it'll probably take over GPON actually this year as far as numbers are concerned. But we do have 2 variants down here, the XS220, which is a beat compliant variant, and then we have an XS010XR on the right hand side, which is a 110 gig port.
Yeah, John,
yep.
I don't know if it's on the next slide or will we talk about those that might be deploying a PoE, maybe a ONT on the outside and a NID or something, or the 010XR-P.
Yeah, I've got it on one of the slides here.
Okay.
Yeah, but you're right, Kyle. It is reverse powered from the inside of the house, from either a beacon or a PoE injector, whatever is easiest. So it's just a easy, power over Ethernet cable that's punched through the wall. So it's makes for an easy installation outside.
Yeah, it's just that for me, it's the ability to be flexible, right? I talked to some operators that they want the NID on the outside, they want the ONT on the outside, and they just want to run an Ethernet cable. And then I talked to other operators that are persistent. They either want a one-box solution or they want all the electronics inside. There's plenty of options either way, whatever the preference is, right? So now we're going to talk about the one-box solutions.
Yeah, the one-box solutions. So Wi-Fi ONTs. DZS had a nice position out in the marketplace when it came to Wi-Fi. I didn't get a lot of reports on how good the Wi-Fi was, but I think most of our devices down below have more radios and higher capacity. On the XGS side, we still have quite a bit of array. I did include the slides, Kyle, on the rest of the Wi-Fi ONTs and beacons, just so the audience can actually take a look at the different models. And there again, we're doing just a comparison, but we do have a ton of other models that don't actually just compare to DZS.
Yeah, and back to the flexibility, whether a company is standardized on a one-box solution or they're doing two-box solutions, I think that helps. And I believe the next slides we're going to talk about the Wi-Fi a little bit.
Yeah, so DZS had a lot of Wi-Fi devices, so I was surprised how many came up. There's a little gig switch, but I figured I'd include it there just in case somebody had it out in the field. But I mean, they had a huge array. They had a lot of Wi-Fi 6. The comparison on the right-hand side is the Nokia products that would probably replace any of these devices. Clearly, Wi-Fi 7 is the talk of the town nowadays. So Wi-Fi 7, we have a whole array of Wi-Fi 7 products. We have 2 more that are coming out by the end of the year, end of third quarter. So if you're interested in doing Wi-Fi 7, obviously Nokia has devices that'll do Wi-Fi 7.
Awesome.
And there's, they actually did have some decent higher power ones. They had some 6Es. We do have some Beacon 19s. We included this. This is a Wi-Fi 7 box on the right-hand side, just because of the price comparison between these two. At the end of the day, you probably want to buy a Wi-Fi 7 if it's almost the same price as a Wi-Fi 6 device. But we have a lot of things that are comparable. Or if you want to upgrade, you can do that.
And I've got some testing I've done kind of independently on Wi-Fi. If you guys have any questions, want to see some actual performance, we do quite a bit of testing in Solon and here in Indiana with different Wi-Fi devices. Happy to share that information on a call or something.
Yeah, and Winncom has been an absolute great partner, just because they stepped right up. They took all the equipment that we could give them. We helped turn it up for them. They got a couple of labs that they're doing end-to-end testing. Engineering-wise, I feel there's nobody better when it comes to Winncom technologies and their engineering staff. The breadth of their technological engineers is great. DZS was also a passive optical LAN provider. So they did provide a lot of in-building MDU type deployments. We do have a lot of products that would match up with that, but any of our Nokia either lifespan products, you could do pizza boxes and stuff. So if you wanted to change it, but really the equipment's not all that different. It's just the PoE aspect of it, and what you want to deliver inside the building.
John, I see more activity in this space. A lot of property owners, and you and I have talked about it. And John and I are going to do a kind of a POL session, probably sometime in Q3, talking about some of the benefits. But we're seeing a lot of property managers. Their exclusivity with certain national carriers is kind of expiring, and they want to own that asset inside. So we're seeing the demand for POL go up. So I'd be kind of a teaser that's coming down the line as well. But Nokia does have an offering, a lot of nice solutions, SFP on stick, wall in wall switches, a lot of really neat stuff.
Yep. And we'll get more. We actually have more coming that are going to be more business oriented.
So John, I think we should probably get into what that conversion program looks like, at least from a technical standpoint. There's a couple options we'll talk about over the next slides, and we'll get into the one that I see is the most prevalent. But John, I'll let you go ahead and talk about kind of the cap and grow as well as the coexistence.
Yeah, I mean, we just kind of, it's kind of up to you what your network needs. Whether you're looking for, ONTs, or you want to replace the OLTs, whatever you're strapped for. I mean, obviously, GPON and XGS, we can coexist those. If you have an all DZS GPON deployment right now, you can, just throw a coexistence in there and throw Nokia XGS OLT. But the one at the top, you can actually just replace the DZS OLT in stand it up next to the DZS OLT and replace it with a Nokia OLT. And then you can run, as the DZS ONTs, I don't know, either fail or, a soft rollout out in the field and you want to replace these eventually. We do have some interop testing that we've done with a lot of DZS ONTs. If there are, Nokia has a lab up in Raleigh. That's one of our fixed networks hubs in the United States, and they do a lot of testing there, from tier ones all the way down to our smallest customers. So we did set up a DZS lab in there with some equipment from some customers, because as soon as the DZS announcement came out, obviously there was some panic in the marketplace when it came to, okay, what do we do next, right? So we have done some interop testing, and there's a few slides in here that will actually demonstrate the ONTs that we have, and then obviously the OLTs, flip-flopping them. Like I said, it's Kyle, it's totally up to the operator how they want to handle, tackling, their DZS issues at this point, whether it's, they can't get ONTs or they're out of ports on their DZS OLTs.
Yeah. Let's go ahead. Next slide, I think, talks about that a little bit more. Just start replacing the ONTs.
Sorry, Kyle, go ahead.
No, and I was just saying that the NPM combo is also an option. And let's go ahead and let's kind of, I think the next slide has some devices that have been tested. Is that correct?
Correct. Yep.
So here's what the ONTs might look like, that you can use with the Nokia OLT. So if you have these devices, they've at least been tested, and you can see there that the icon kind of represents data and IPTV. VoIP gets a little trickier. John, you want to talk about that just in case?
Yeah, voice over IP, because the management system is the one that usually creates the XML and controls a lot of the the features when it comes to SIP and VoIP. We do have some reverse interop that we've done with the DZS OLT and ONT, which is on the next slide. But if it's data only, DZS was a global provider, and being a global provider, you have to adhere to the standards that the global community needs, and that's why we're so interop capable with DZS. You can see, and these are the ones that we've actually gotten. These are the most popular ones we've gotten from our customers. If anyone on the call has something different and you want to get it tested out, sorry, you can either we can have Kyle test it out, or we can send it up to Raleigh to do a full interop testing. But you can actually, if you have these DZS ONTs out in the field, you can actually just replace your OLT and swing fibers over and provision the ONTs, and they'll just keep chugging along. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right, Kyle? Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead, John. I was going to say that the next slide is the one I kind of want to highlight on, and as an operator, I can tell you, we typically budget 9, 12, 18 months in advance, and kind of a curveball like this doesn't always help. And the idea is you need to continue to grow your customer base, so you need to continue to do installations. So when there's a mix-up or a curveball or a hindrance in the market, I think this is going to be, an easier lift initially is, you just start getting the Nokia ONTs, and then you start budgeting for OLT replacements in the future, right? If your 2025 budget is already set in stone, you need to continue to grow your network and gain those subscribers and get that monthly reoccurring. But the ability to give you a path forward is, I think, a big benefit of using the Nokia, right? So John, I'll let you talk a little bit about some of the testing that's been done with the DZS OLTs.
Yeah, I mean, you can see that the icons that we put up there, obviously the two on the outer ends don't have any POTS ports, or voice ports. The two inner ones, we do have voice working. There is some tweaks that we kind of need to do, but it is, a lot of these ONTs are actually recording many of the alarms that you would normally see in a DZS or Nokia management system. Obviously, this would be a DZS management system, but you would actually see the, so you can monitor, right? I mean, alarming is pretty critical when it comes to running your network. If you don't have any alarms, you have no idea whether the customer's, on or, not, right? I mean, active or not active. So you kind of want to, be proactive about whether, if you see an alarm come in, you can work on it, right? So there is a lot of the alarming is available to this, dying gas. If there's batteries that are hooked up to it, obviously the UPS will send it up through the ONT. It's been, fairly positive. There again, we'll expand this ONT testing once we get a lot of the information that we need from these layer 2 ONTs, and then we'll probably start trying the one box solutions with the Wi-Fi ONTs.
Yeah, no, I just think it was important for me to reiterate that you can continue to gain your subscribers. Doesn't necessarily have to affect your 2025 budget, with the idea that, at least there's a path forward. And I was kind of sharing with John that as an operator, when these type of things would happen, whether it was in FWA or, cable, coax, whatever, you had to continue, right? You've got a balance sheet you've got to maintain. You've got forecasting and budgeting you have to hit. There's always the ability to move on your feet, but this to me was the easiest solution to continue to grow your customer base and continue to gain that revenue. So
yeah, your network never sleeps, right? It just keeps.
That's right.
That's right. It's got to keep continuing to grow.
Yep. So we're about done here. The next slide we're going to talk about is what information we might need from you to build a quote, or if you want to continue conversations, maybe you have a particular model of OLT or ONT. Just understanding the type of services you're offering. Are you doing voice, or are you just doing VoIP? Maybe you're not landing in a POTS port. IPTV, we know there's operators out there still doing it. Most of them have kind of gone over the top on that. And then your speed packages, right? But these are kind of the boilerplate questions we might need in order to put a bill of materials, or if you want to talk about what your particular what your use case or your progression plan might look like. Happy to have those conversations. John, anything else from a customer questionnaire standpoint? And it doesn't necessarily have to be DZS. We have several operators that are looking to kind of switch technologies. Maybe they outgrew a proprietary PON solution. So happy to have any of those conversations.
Yeah, just to change of pace, or you want to obviously go a different direction. DZS kind of threw a wrench into everybody's game plan when it came to having a network that was built on DZS. And there was some decent sized networks out there that obviously they left them hanging. I mean, they closed the doors and everybody kind of walked out the one day. So That's tough. That's never fun for anybody, right? When they have to run a business. So,
Yeah.
you know, I mean,
to that point, a lot of the things we've talked about of why Nokia is a good choice. You know, the shakeup has definitely caused other operators to reevaluate their supply chain, which is why we, you know, spent quite a bit of time explaining why Nokia, you know, what the benefits of Nokia are in that space.
and then tariffs, right? I mean, we just don't know the future of tariffs at this point. So, you know, being a large vendor out in this marketplace has its advantages, just because, you know, when we commit to building a particular ONT, you know, whether it's in Malaysia, Taiwan, wherever it is, I mean, we buy millions and millions of components. So we're way ahead of the market when it comes to, you know, purchasing power and, you know, building power and all that other stuff. And we scale down. Don't worry about how big, you know, Nokia is. We scale down. I mean, we've started with some providers that started in their garage, and now they have about, you know, 58,000 subscribers on their network. So it was just, you know, we scaled down pretty well.
Absolutely. Yeah, you guys have been a pleasure to deal with, the customer experience team, the engineering team. You know, getting, you know, we technically have a 2-site deployment, right?
Yes, you do.
One in Ohio, one in Indiana, with active data going across both.
Yeah.
So it's been an absolute pleasure to work with you guys on this. Are there any questions? I think you can drop them in the chat over here. One of the things I definitely like to mention is, if you know, you should get a survey after the call if there's any other topics, or if you want to have a one-on-one call to talk about your specific deployment. John and I are happy to facilitate. I'll close with, if there's anything we can do to help from a PON, Wi-Fi, broadband standpoint, feel free to reach out. John and John's team have great experience with many different manufacturers and been around the PON industry for a long time. So feel free to reach out if there's anything we can do to help.
Yep. Thanks for having me on, Kyle. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Don, is there anything we need to do from a closing standpoint?
Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you to the two of you gentlemen, to our presenters. And as a quick reminder to our listeners, we'll be sending out an email shortly with all the information you just learned. So please keep an eye out for that. And as Kyle had mentioned, there'll be a brief little survey in there for you. But I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the day. And again, thank you for joining.
Yes, thank you for joining.
See you guys.
Bye-bye.